Hey yo, hey, hey, be a way, oh, hey yo, hey, be a way, oh, hey yo, hey yo, hey, be a way, oh, hey yo, hey yo, remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky. There I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand.
We all have mothers as men. For us, as Ungwahongwe men, is that that woman is really special because she's the one that has birthed us. She has given us life, and women are life givers. They are the caretakers of the earth. They grow plants and stuff. And we have stories about that woman, that sky woman, and how she got here, and the things that she brought with her from the sky, and how she walked and made the earth, how we all came to be from that one woman. But from the very beginning of time is man abused women. But in our culture is that we're taught that over the years that the women are special because they give birth. They give us life. But after so many years of the world being here, is that man took over. Man forced women down. And so today is us men are way dominant to the women here on earth, and we treat them badly. We call them names. We do all these different things. But if you think about it, who's the bad ones? It's us, because we're saying all these things about them, or there's abuse happening to them. So when you look at that, you'll understand why men are the way they are. Is they're afraid of women. Our cultures are, the men are afraid of women. And we're tough. We got muscles, and we can throw each other around and stuff like that. But that woman is stronger. I guess a question to you guys is, do you think you could bear a child?
Yeah, it's, I think, something unimaginable for us, and something that kind of building on what you were saying from an early age, is that your mother has sacrificed so much for you, and that debt can never be repaid. And I think it is a bit of an interesting development of, at some point in a young guy's life, that can be tested, that your mother, your father, these people in important roles in your lives cannot hold that same place.
Yeah, I think Al had an interesting point there about like how he thought that a lot of like this like gender-based violence and these kind of acts come from like sort of fear, like a fear of women, or like maybe like their intellectual capacity over us. That might not be the right way of saying it, but just like how there's a bit of a barrier between men and women, and how it's like difficult to overcome. And I think sometimes this like ambiguity or like confusion between genders can kind of contribute to these kind of acts that happen, because it's like mysterious. Like the other gender might be kind of seen as something mysterious or lesser known.
It's a learned thing today, and we see it in society all the time. A lot of the violence that's taken place is because we don't look at each other anymore as allies. We don't look at each other as human. So we might say, well, you're indigenous, you're white, you're black, you know. And we say those things in those terms, is that it separates us. And when we separate, is like that is then we start to begin to doubt each other. We don't see eye to eye, because we don't look at each other as another human being. And so we get angry. And that's where that racism comes from, is fear of the other, because I'm saying you're white, so we're gonna fear you. If you say, oh, well, I'm afraid, instead of sitting down and saying, I'm afraid of you because I don't understand you. I don't understand the way your life is. I don't understand your culture, and that. And so to have a dialogue that can bring us together and have an understanding of each other, is that's what we need to go back to. And one of the stories about indigenous people and that is that we weren't liked because we were savages. And so we were killed. Our ancestors were killed because the people that came here didn't understand our culture. So anything that we did that we were originally taught from, I'm going to use the word God. So that God gave us that knowledge and that understandings of how we should be in the environment we're living in. But when somebody comes into that environment and they don't understand, what's the first thing that happens? Is fear. And so we begin to fear each other because we don't know each other. So there's a conflict already. But because we don't know how to interact with one another, is then we start to build reasons why we should be dominant over the other person. And that's the same way with men and women, is that we don't know how to communicate to them. And, is we get girlfriends, and the only way we know how to communicate with them is touching kissing and the biggest thing is having sex. And when they don't, then we call them down. We say, you know, like, you were leading me on. We use different things to make them look bad. And so that those girls end up feeling lost. And they start to, if you call somebody something long enough, is they actually become what you call them. For me is I remember when I was little and I was first learning to go to school and everything, I was called a dumb Indian. And I still sometimes call myself a dumb Indian. Is because it sticks in your mind. And so when you call a woman down, that's whatever you're saying to her, it's in her mind. And because we don't know how to communicate, is she has to carry that. And so the thing that I understand is that when I call a woman down, is I'm not calling just that woman down. I'm calling every woman the same thing. Every woman on this earth. I don't care what part of the earth she is. She's affected by my word. And that's why we're always told that as Indigenous men is be careful what you say. Talk with honesty, love, caring. Talk with respect. Would you treat your mother the way that you treat a girl, your girlfriend? Would you treat your mother that way? When you get upset with her, do you treat your mother that same way? I don't think so. Your sister, your aunties, your cousins, those women, they have just as much a right to be here on earth as we do. But because of our fears and everything, and when they don't do what we do and we force, is sometimes we lose it because of them hollering and screaming and everything, and the men lose their mind and they end up killing them, which is really, really, really sad. Because if you ever seen a man that murdered a woman, and you went to that courtroom, and that man, mother is sitting in there, or sisters or cousins are sitting in there, and they're talking about that man that murdered that young girl. You should be able to see how much hurt goes into that young man's mother or siblings, the daughters, the cousins, aunties that are sitting there with him. Because it brings fear into them too, what he did to the other person. Can they trust him? If he gets mad at home, the mom is thinking, do I have to fear for my life too? And sometimes it is true. They should fear for their lives with a person like that. And so with us is that we're always taught how to respect women. But there's a lot of our men that don't also, because they don't have this people to teach them about the things that they should have learned at a young age. But and it's sad because you hear on the news more about an indigenous man when he murders somebody. But if a white man kills somebody, they don't broadcast it. It's not all over the news. But if a black man or indigenous or Chinese or somebody else does, it's broadcast. And that's when it's broadcast like that, it brings racism. It brings hatred between the races of piece of people. So to me is sometimes, I'm not talking about you, the media plays a big part in racism. It plays a big part in us hating one another.
I think off of that, like the first thing for me that comes to mind is just like kind of rage. Like having someone that close to you that someone disrespects that much is like super offensive. And I think when you look at it in like a modern context of the violence we're seeing, particularly against Indigenous women and children, this just like should open like that sort of a question. It's hard to ask yourself and hard to reflect on. But I think when we're thinking about that specifically, it kind of forced me to come to the realization of how important this issue is and like how personal we all should be taking it, because whether Indigenous, white, Black, Asian, all women are people. And I think a lot of times in our society, we lose track of that. And I think it's important that we ground ourselves and kind of come back to that realization that all these people are people.
As you say, like you see it on the news a lot, or you hear these statistics, but at least for me, even after seeing statistics or amount of violence-based interactions that might happen, regardless of gender or race, I feel like I don't ask myself that question. But you just asking that just now, it stunned me, and it made me really actually think about, okay, what would I do? And then, like you said, there's no, you kind of need to be asked that question to really think about how important it is and how bad it is.
Yeah. When you frame it like that, it becomes so much more personal, I think. And that's realistically how we should be looking at this issue, I think, all the time.
And the connection that you made about just how an individual woman is treated is reflected onto how women in society are treated. And you can create that emotional connection to someone that you love or is close to you. But just hearing what you were talking about and thinking to that example of creating the connection between interaction with women on a day-to-day level can be held to the same standard as and have it reflect how you'd interact with someone you know and a woman you know, because the reality is that the environment and how men in society make women feel, even if it's one or two many bad apples, if that happens, society has those standards and women as a whole are affected, and that includes your aunt, your mother, your girlfriend, any any woman in society. And we see it in Queens, where, especially with the downtown scene, the bar scene, if there's a news report about, I don't know, some instance happens, collectively as a campus, I think everyone takes note of that, and women more than men have to change their behaviors because of societal standards and societal interactions.
Athletics a lot of the times is kind of perceived as very like hyper masculine kind of event and like sort of gathering. And I think a lot of the times like you hear like locker room chat kind of gets normalized. And I think, as you said, like these little micro instances at the bottom, a lot of the time, like if you look at it like a pyramid, kind of stabilize the top. And like you were saying, like how what you're saying can then like actually like contribute to the actual instances, like whether it be some sort of like what's seen as a joke, seen as some sort of like a slight, those things can actually contribute to the actual big acts, like a murder or a rape, something like that. Yeah.
And I think your question does a good job about invoking that emotional response, because you have such a deep connection to it. But I think it kind of talks to that, just a bit of that learned ignorance of just because you're not directly involved means you're kind of not contributing to the problem. But coming back to what allyship means, and what I've been thinking about is you need to have an active role. It's not good enough just to sit around, because sitting around, letting the locker room chat go by creates the society that we have, and the circumstances that women find themselves in. And so, yeah,
I think like moving forward, like it's important that like us and other men kind of in the Queens community take like a learning like this and apply it, and not only like we can't just turn our heads and accept these like comments and these little micro acts. Like we need to stand up and address them, because that's what's contributing to the actual problems and actual like assaults that occur.
Hey yo, hey, hey, baby, I'm with it, oh, hey yo, hey, baby, I'm with it, oh, hey yo, hey yo, hey.